Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Going back to the set-top box, I'm very familiar with this provision. Chairman Bliley and I are the co-authors of that provision in 1996. By the way, I'm also the author of the do not call list, and it's just as relevant today as it was a quarter of a century ago. And we do want that, obviously, to be updated and enforced as diligently as possible. I obviously had many conversations with Tom Bliley on what our legislative intent was, and I know what we wanted to do. We wanted to just break down this monopoly that existed that forced consumers to purchase, not purchase actually, to rent a set-top box from the company. And the reason that we were both concerned with it was that we had just finished the process of preventing consumers to purchase phones. For 75 years, Americans had been forced to rent a phone, a black rotary dial phone from the phone company. It's a good business model. $3 a month, 12 months a year, for 50 years. That's what our mothers and fathers had to do. It's a good business model. If you can make someone rent something and pay you $1,800 to rent this, at that time, hunk of junk, because companies were ready to move on and innovate, new companies. So we had to break it down so that you didn't have to rent anymore. And so along comes the cable industry and adopts the same model, that the consumer is forced to rent a set-top box. They can't go out and get a different box from an innovative company. That's what Tom Bliley and I wanted to see accomplished. And where are we 20 years later? Here's where we are. 99% of all Americans are still renting a set-top box. That's not innovation. 99%. What's the average per family? $232 per year to the cable companies, to the satellite companies, to rent the box. So we haven't seen any innovation. We haven't seen any breakthroughs. We're still waiting for the revolution where you can go down to the store or download the app that allows you to have a new way of accessing this information in the modern era. That's what it was all about. So for the purposes of this discussion, net neutrality is to content what this set-top box rulemaking is to ensuring that the devices, the access points, allow for the consumer to control, the consumer to decide, right? And so that's pretty much what this whole debate is about. And so, Mr. Chairman, how closely can we analogize this revolution to the black rotary dial phone revolution in terms of our need to open up innovation so that the consumer has more choices?
Well, thank you, Chairman. I think, thank you, Senator. I think the analogy is spot on. And here's the fascinating thing about it. You know, the cable industry was for it before they were against it. You know, they filed with us in 2010 saying that they wanted exactly the kind of things that we're talking about here now. And today, however, everybody is inventing all these imaginary horribles. I mean, the most interesting thing to me, and I pointed it out to Senator Nelson, I mean, we stole the language from the cable card license agreement because that's been working. And we put it in the item. But it is now announced to us that that language, which has been working for the last several decades, is now a, complete and total failure. One can only scratch their head and say, gee, there must be a bigger agenda being played here than the facts.
And can I just say, we're still in the set-top box era. Comcast, just one company, a great company, by the way, but Comcast is installing 40,000 set-top boxes a day in America. A day. So we're in the set-top box era. There's a 99% control by these companies. And to pretend otherwise is just to ignore the real life experience of every single American who has that clicker with that set-top box in front of them. And they would like another choice if we can provide it for them. Okay? They might stick with the incumbent, but I'll tell you one thing, the incumbent's going to start to innovate real fast with regard to what that box can do, because there's nothing like Darwinian, paranoia-inducing competition to spur innovation that makes consumers feel good and lowers the price that they have to pay to rent the box if that's what they want to continue to do. So thank you all so much for your great work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.